Live from the Balls Visual Radio Studios from Woodmead in Johannesburg. This is the F&Martinengo show. But he is an acclaimed
food critic.
Yeah.
Food lover, food appreciator,
and
loving the jacket.
A dedicated follower fashion as well, I must say. It is Matt Preston. Please have a seat.
Come and grab a seat over here, Matt. Welcome to Balls Visual Radio. It is great to have you. Welcome to South Africa. We are very, very, very pleased to have you in our country.
I'm a bit shocked. I just walked in here to the studio and there was like a welcome party of people kind of applauding. It's very freaky. I've been given a cupcake in a jar that is absolutely out of this world. Wow. It's a kind of vanilla cake at the bottom and a kind of salty caramel cream on the top. So here's my lunch. I love my life. I love my job.
Well, I tell you, we've been building up to this for quite a while. We must just tell you.
It must be a slow day in radio.
Yeah. No, you know. I have to start off by asking this: why is it, Matt, that MasterChef Australia is so much better than any other MasterChef we've seen on TV? And I mean to not discredit our local guys, but really, you guys have just taken it to another level.
I don't know. Look, I think, the original idea had been running for a long time in the UK, and there was a guy called Paul Franklin who said, right, what we're going to do, put everyone in the house, we'll knock them out two at a time. Yeah. And then I think the three of us, myself, George and Gary, when we started judging the show, we all wanted to be Randy from American Idol. We all wanted to be going, hey, you go guy. Yeah. We love what you're about. None of us wanted to be Simon Cowell. We all wanted, and so we all started out trying to, because again, when someone brings you something to eat, you've got to say thank you. Even if it's your grandmother putting up something really terrible, you say thank you and you eat it because that's what you do as respect. So respect for food is important. Making the show all about people with dishes, great dishes, cooking food. All the drama comes from the cook. People tracing their dreams is always uplifting. And then there's something universal. I think that's the most thing. When we made the show, we thought it would be a disaster. Everyone thought it would end after like 4 weeks. They'd pull it because no one's watching it. And what we found as the show broke into other territories is that that kind of whole idea of building a show around the importance of cooking,
yes,
and the role that it plays it's a universal theme. That idea of sitting down and breaking bread with your friends, your family, is something that everybody does, and we've lost the way a bit. The kids would be off with their iPads playing games and eating lunch there. Dad would be off watching cable sports. Mum would be there washing up the dishes. It had kind of exploded. It imploded that idea of sitting down at a table and just having that great family time.
I think you bring up so many interesting or important points there. Family time, but then also the fact that no matter what somebody's serving you, as you say, you got to say thank you, because I think I can cook a fairly good piece of cow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then you've got good cow here as well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
really good cow.
Thank you.
So if I sit there and say, I've cooked my cow and I think it's really, really good, it's a subjective opinion. I mean, it's a hell of a difficult to be a critic.
Oh, no, I don't think it is. You see, I think that's the most exciting thing for me originally about doing the show is that, chefs, food critics, they're kind of, I'm there, the mongoose with the two snakes, the two cobras, you know what I mean? That's the angle. But very quickly, we kind of realized, and I've known the boys for a long time, we realized that actually there's an objectivity about food. There's always one dish that's better than the other. Mm. And so when it comes to deciding who goes and who stays in MasterChef, it always comes down to the dish you want to eat again. It's irrelevant. Like Hayden Quinn, who's becoming quite a big star here. Hayden went really early. Hayden was TV gold in Australia. Yes. Like, he would do an immunity challenge. The audience would jump by 20% on the show. But when he put up a dish that was too salty, he went home, regardless of what the producers said, regardless of the begging from the network to have them.
There must be a tough call then behind the scenes when you've decided that. I mean, are those your decisions, or do you actually sit with the crew behind the scenes?
No, they'll come and try and nudge. I'll say things like, I thought it was really clever the way they put creme de menthe for the lobster. And we're going, no, it was disgusting. No, they're not staying. And I mean, the great thing about having three kind of, old judges who know each other well, we keep each other honest. There's no, and we make the decision. It's our credibility on the line. Watching at home if it's good or bad. And if someone puts up a bad dish, it's our job. It's our job to keep it real and keep it honest.
Okay, but let's go the other hat. We're doing it as a food critic, where you're writing for about various restaurants, etc. You must have some people that love you and some people that are
Despise.
very, very scared if you walk into their restaurant.
I've had some massive run-ins with chefs, but about stuff that I've written. But invariably, if I write a bad review and there's 5 bad points in there, I've saved another 5 that I haven't written about. So I can always throw it in. And invariably, when stuff, normally if something's surprisingly bad, you always go back again to see if it's true. But I've had arguments with owners about there was no grit in the squid, and I've gone, well, there is grit in the squid. And by the way, here's the photo of the grit that I took out of my mouth and put on the side of the plate. I can't believe that you tell me that the lemon still had the sticker on it, And you go, well, here's the picture of the lemon sticker. So you have to protect yourself. I mean, I think I've always maintained that I write reviews for one person only, and that's the reader.
Correct.
And regardless, I can't. It's not about whether I like the chef, whether I like that. I want to give people try and match a person to an experience, and it's about making sure. For me, the ideal review is you go because you like what you've read and you have the same experience that I've had, and that to me is a great review.
Matt, what about the rise of food journalists, chefs, food critics, etc.? You've really become rock stars. It's taken a
Dresses
sort of,
like a rock star.
I know, but I mean, it kind of from nowhere, all of a sudden, people started to take interest in TV cooking shows. You had BBC climbing on very early on in those days, and then the networks picked up. And I mean, it's big business. You guys are really, really famous now. You can't walk down the road without being stopped, I'm sure. How does that all work? Because you are really a rock star.
It's look. I mean, there were the rock stars, and then the comedians became the rock stars.
Yeah.
And then the chefs became the rock stars, and then I think the rock stars are back being the rock stars again.
Yeah.
We have a
They'd
wonderful
probably
world,
be glad about that. Yeah.
The return of the Rolling Stones is a great example of that. Look, I think there's one. I mean, I remember having a big row with a journalist, a talk radio guy in Perth, and going, "It's ridiculous. I mean, it's like food, and it's just food." And you're going, mate, tell me what happens if you don't eat. If you have cut food out of your life. Food is central. Yeah. Not only central to keeping us alive, but it's also central to who we are. It's how we define ourselves, And if I ask you to say what makes an Afrikaner, or what makes what makes a Cape Malay person, they will tell you it's babuti. It'll be the sport you enjoy, and it'll be the food you eat. Yeah. And in terms of when groups migrate and they go to other countries, and we've got a lot of migration in Australia, the things that the national dress will go, the dance will go, the language will probably go, but the thing that will maintain and remain is normally sport. So if you're Italian, when the Melbourne Grand Prix comes around, you're out there with your Ferrari shirt on, absolutely,
for sure.
And you're probably killing a pig to make salami, up with the uncle up in the country. So it's there's a reason why it resonates. Also, food TV is very cheap to make. Not MasterChef, because that's very expensive to make. Yeah. But to make kind of shows now, Anthony Bourdain's shown you can do it with like a crew of 3 people shooting on handy cams, technology to help them do it. And we kind of like it. It's a wonderful escape. And it's travel now is as much about tasting a country as seeing the sights.
I think that you hit that spot on, because I mean, people have more access to travel nowadays, and these kind of shows give you that opportunity, because a lot of people go overseas to different countries and land up in a tourist place and land up eating tourist food, as opposed to going out and actually sampling the delights of a specific country.
It's very interesting that this idea of and I think you're starting to see it here in South Africa, seeing it around the world, that the top chefs are trying to express the sense of the place of where they're from. So I came here and I wanted to use dorper lamb from the Karoo because it's famous. It's a great produce, and that's exciting. I come here and I want to eat Cook Sisters, and I want to have Sheshwanwa, and I want to Maponi worm would be quite. I'd like to have a taste of that, please. Thank you.
Well, we'll have it at the good and good food and wine show.
I've asked, but I'm hoping to find an insect booth somewhere there, but I haven't seen one so far. I've seen balsamic vinegar pearls, which are quite exciting. That's a new thing. So I think that idea of going, and it's what's attracted people to Italy and to France for an age, is going to eat the food. So there's no reason why it shouldn't be the same in Gauteng or in the Western Cape.
Matt, what about the logistics of MasterChef? There's a question that I've always wanted to know, and I have to bring it back to the show because I don't know if I could do this in your shoes. Maybe you can help me here. When you've got a group of, say, 20 contestants who are all bringing you plates of food, I certainly know from working in TV, it's a slow process. and that food's going to be cold.
Yeah.
So 95% of the time, are you eating cold food?
If we do an off-site challenge, it'll be hot because we'll get it straight off the grill. If we're doing a quick cook challenge, and if it's a quick cook, we don't have to break the crew, so the food will be hot. So if we're tasting at the benches, it'll be hot.
Right.
If we're doing a big 24, 48 kind of massive tasting, the food will be cold because we're breaking the crew. However, what you don't see is obviously us walking around during the cook and tasting, but also we make sure that all the cooks now they do a pretty plate. And then they have another plate of all. So we take as soon as time is called, but you have to because crumb stuff can go soggy.
Yeah.
That fish that's perfectly cooked now can be overcooked by the time you taste it. So we kind of go around and do an initial test. You got to be kind of.
You got to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
As fair as you can be.
And the other thing, if we started tasting the testing at the beginning of the cook with 24 people, the first 5 dishes would be great, and the last 5 could be terrible. And so you got to keep it kind of even.
Okay.
Very, very interesting.
Now, you're here for the Good Food and Wine Show.
Yes.
Which is quite an appropriate name because it wouldn't have worked if it was called the Bad Food and Wine Show.
or the average food.
Yes. Well, tomorrow it could turn out to be the Bad Food and Wine Show. But now, what is your actual role there? I mean, are you there, besides being the celebrity being there, I mean, are you going to be sampling dishes? Are you going to be judging stuff?
I'm cooking.
Yay!
Which is kind of worrying.
Now, this is something we haven't seen.
No, I know. Look. I about 2 years. I've been writing recipes for almost as long as I've been writing reviews. And about 2 years ago, the producer said, "Hey, you could do a little slot on the masterclass section." So I did that, and I did Coca-Cola chicken wings, and they went off, and it became one of the most downloaded recipes ever on MasterChef.
Wow.
And then the next year they went, "Well, I'm sorry, now your contract means if you want it." And so I then was given a slot on every masterclass.
Yeah.
And my aim was to find cheats and hacks. So can we question some authority? Can we find a quicker, simpler, easier way of doing something? One of the things, and that's based on doing in terms of the Dems. It's what's going to be in the new cookbook I'm doing that comes out here in October, and it's basically, mayonnaise is always made one way. You hear about mayonnaise. It's an egg yolk and some mustard and some lemon juice in a bowl. Then you whisk it, and then you got one hand holding the bowl, you got one hand holding the whisk, and then it says slowly drizzle in olive oil, and you go, but I don't have another hand. So there's got to be another way of making mayonnaise, and one of the MasterChef family, a winner called Matt Follis, sent me this link saying, "Hey, check this out." And it's this mayonnaise where you pour everything in. You put an egg, you put a whole egg in there, you put the oil, put everything in, you get a stick blender, and literally you pull the stick blender up, going through the mayonnaise, and it emulsifies it immediately. And suddenly you've got mayonnaise in 3 seconds. And everyone goes, and all the chefs that you kind of say, "We're going to do this," they go, "That won't work, man. That's not the way I learned 30 years ago, and I've made mayonnaise for all my life one way." And you suddenly show the other way, and they go, "Crikey!" And I think that's the door that's been opened by guys like Heston Blumenthal and by Ferran Adria. Can we make a flatbread? I make a bread dough, and it's not a sourdough as great as the best sourdough you're going to find here in Jersey, but you at night, wooden spoon, metal bowl, kilo of plain flour, tablespoon, 14 grams of powdered yeast, tablespoon of salt, 950 mils of warm water. Mix it all up with the spoon so it all comes together. Cover in plastic wrap. Put in the fridge overnight. And the next morning you get this strange, bubbly, kind of sticky, elastic mass. You just roll that in flour and you cut it into kind of toddler fist-sized lumps, and you pop in the oven for 200-degree oven for 30 minutes. You get these amazing bread rolls that are super crusty on the outside, they're fluffy in the middle, and you've made bread, and it's taken you the grand total of 4.5 minutes plus the cooking time.
Where can we find that recipe? We've got to get that.
You can find that recipe online at the Masterclass website.
We've got it because Ian's actually a brilliant cook.
Thank you.
And as well as bread.
Yeah, well,
he made a beer bread.
Have you ever made beer bread?
I have made beer bread.
Yeah,
but you see, kneading and proving and putting it in one place and taking it out and punching it down. And there is a kind of male shed element of craft about doing things like making homebrew. There's a craft to it, and so I love that side of it. But I also love the idea that, here's a way to make mayonnaise rather than buy it. Here's a way you can get up in the morning, your kids can get up and they can be eating crusty hot rolls, and it hasn't taken you 3 hours.
Sure, no, absolutely. The hacks. Have
you got a good recipe in your book to how to make custard?
I'm not a big fan of custard.
Oh, you see, because I am.
Yeah, you see.
Because otherwise, I just buy it in like the thing.
You see, I don't mind a Tetra Pak.
Okay,
finger
it's a
custard,
Tetra Pak,
and
yeah.
actually,
Because that's what I do with mayonnaise. I just buy it in a bottle.
Yeah, but you
now
see,
I've learned.
but it's because custard is a pain in the bum to make.
Oh, is it?
So you got to stir it, and you got to get eggs right temperature, and it's just when it starts to bubble, then you take it off. And you
Okay,
put it-
too much.
Oh,
No,
you've
I
lost
just-
me.
That's
I
right,
just buy it in
yeah,
the
yeah,
Tetra
you
Pak.
lost me.
and that. So I'd rather buy it in the Tetra Pak.
Okay, I'm there with you.
Whip up some cream, puree some fresh fruit, mix it together, make it kind of full, and it tastes delicious. Because
there
again,
we go, there we go.
here's the difference between I'm a home cook and a chef searches for perfection and finds the hardest way of getting to perfection. I'm a home cook. I want pretty tasty and I want super easy. And that's the difference. And that's, I suppose, the difference between, say, how George would approach a recipe and how I would approach a recipe.
Do you throw it in their face often that you can hack stuff, George and Gary? If you can hack
Actually-
it quicker than they do, does that come up a lot?
Well, there is a theory that there was George and Gary pushed me to a masterclass. They could laugh at my cooking, but I like to point out that of the three judges, it isn't the two chefs that's won the big award for recipe writing.
Wow.
In 2008, I'm just going to put it out there
Yeah,
way
we'll
before
put it out there.
MasterChef. You know, no. Look. You know what's great about it is that when it comes to hacks, George and Gary are the best helpers because often they've got their own hacks that they'll give to me.
Yes.
Or there's a famous internet sensation called the Nutella cake, which you whisk up lots of eggs and then you stir in melted Nutella and you bake it. It makes this strange kind of collapsing, organic, monstrous cake. But the problem about that cake is it tastes very eggy. So it's got an eggy smell to it because there's so much egg. And so I said to George, look, this is a problem. And George said, teaspoon vanilla extract in there. And suddenly it'll kill the smell of the egg. And so there's George, thankfully, helping me take
To
a
hack.
to a whole nother level who's our MasterChef.
Fantastic.
Now you're going to be cooking tomorrow and Sunday.
And then you got Buddy the cake boss tomorrow,
Okay.
and Reza Mohammed tomorrow, who are both amazing and definitely worth seeing.
And what sort of times are you cooking? I mean, are you doing
I'm doing
two sessions
I'm
or one
doing a
session?
10:30 Sunday and then another one around about lunchtime.
Okay, brilliant.
And there's still tickets available, and we'll just muck around. I mean, the idea is not everything's going to work. I mean,
Well, that's half the fun, isn't it?
And it is half the fun. You just don't know what's going to happen. And but I think that's the whole thing. When you cook at home, you have to stay light on your feet. You have to stay flexible because the whole myth about a recipe is that it's a set in stone, but ingredients change. Moisture in the air. If you're making pizza in Cape Town, you're making it here, drier environment here, it's gonna stay crispy longer. So you've got to play with oven temperatures. So you have to have some innate skill in order to just kind of fiddle around. Coriander's stronger at certain times of the year than the others. Lamb is hung for longer, has a lambier smell. So therefore, you need to oomph up the flavour of the stuff. So all that stuff. But that's the great thing. That's what makes you a great home cook, or that's what you claim.
Well, that's what I'd never claim. Anyway, now have you ever? I mean, besides the on the program itself, what is the most adventurous dish that somebody's presented before you that didn't quite really work out?
You want a list? Okay.
Just
Ironically, some of the worst food we saw was on MasterChef Professionals, which was on here recently. A guy called Rhett put up a dish which was a camel liver dish. Now, camel meat is delicious, and it's great in a tagine. It's kind of somewhere between beef and lamb. It's a really good stewing meat, but camel liver is kind of greeny, reddy brown.
So it must really look good.
It looks disgusting, and it lives up to that promise. It's bilious and horrid. That's pretty bad.
You wanted to get Bear Grylls on the line there for a minute.
And I think even Bear Grill, if Bear had grilled it would have been better than what we got.
Camel liver.
That's pretty bad. And then in this season, a top chef puts up a brain smoothie. He processes brain, and it's just like, no, there's no way. I'm just going to say this right now. Like, okay, creaminess of brains, crunchiness from outside, acidity of mustard, I get. But you're not having brains for the, that kind of like blitzing it and having it in a little grey, and it goes grey, and you're going, that is just disgusting, man. Banana aioli, that's another bad one. Strawberry risotto was pretty bad.
Oh no, that sounds disgusting.
And darling Nolene, who's in season 4, I went to the football with the other day, who's doing brilliantly well, put up a dish which was kind of this stir fry of lamb mince and parsnip and feta and about pretty much everything in the pantry, 200 different ingredients, none of which quite went together. That was pretty terrible. So, but luckily, the new season you're getting in September, I reckon we've got the best cooks we've ever got, and the food has been extraordinary. We've probably seen, of the top 10 dishes in MasterChef, maybe 6 of them this season. The top 20, maybe 14 of them. There's some amazing cooking. And you can see with myself and George and Gary that we get super excited because, when you come in, hey guys, it's an offal challenge. They're all cooking kidneys. You go, but they're not very good at cooking. Please, can we go? And nowadays we're actually getting delicious food up, and the sort of food that because I'm sitting there, I've done this is my third book coming out, so I'm always searching for inspiration.
Sure.
And I'm sitting there going, oh wow. Okay, what a great idea. Or Lucy, I need the recipe of that lemon mousse because it reminds me of the one my grandmother had and she died before giving me the recipe. And so, so being a food nerd, to be surrounded by other food nerds for 6 months a year is kind of, you know what it's like.
It's a dream job for you, really.
It's a dream job for me, yeah absolutely.
Do you think restaurants, for example, in Australia, because of the success of the show, have maybe now all of a sudden added different varieties or even try to improve their game? Maybe those chefs were a little bit complacent and now sort of stepping up a little?
I think in Australia there's been a renaissance in the last 10 years of expressing an Australian style of cuisine and people being braver, chefs traveling. You go to I went to Copenhagen 2 years ago, and they're in the top 4 restaurants in Copenhagen. 2 of the sous chefs are Australian.
Wow.
Australians have always travelled. I mean, they're like the South Africans. They travel to get the experience. So we get that skill coming back after 2 years, which is really exciting. I think there's a general movement about and it starts really with René Redzepi from Noma. Scandinavia is dominated by the top restaurants are all French, and him going, wait a second, we've got a great cuisine. Let's do a genuinely kind of Danish cuisine or Scandinavian cuisine. I think every other country's looked at that and gone, well, if René can do it, then we can do it. We can do it in India, or we can do it in Greece, or we can do it in Johannesburg, or we can do it in Melbourne, and that's exciting. I think people eat out a lot more, so there's a lot more of that casual stuff. So there's a lot more about feeding the diner rather than feeding the ego of the chef. And Marco P.O.I. always says the ego of the chef is the most poisonous sauce in any restaurant. And that's definitely the case. You want, sometimes you want to go and have a really good steak with some fantastic chips and some horseradish. Thank you very much. I'm very happy. It's a universally adored thing. We don't need a kind of creme de menthe sauce on top of that steak to show us how great the chef is.
Food critic aside, everything else aside, when you wake up one day and you go, this is my favorite meal, I absolutely love it. What does Matt absolutely love?
There is no better taste than a pie at the rugby when your team is 20 points and there's 15 minutes to go.
It always goes back to the simple stuff.
Absolutely right. It's universal. And again, it's about who you're with. It's about who you're with, and it's about where you are, and that's the romance of food. You can't divorce that wine from the drive down the bumpy dirt road to go to the winery. I mean that's part, and that's why the wine. That's bizarre. There's a wonderful neuroscientist called Dr. Charles Spence in Oxford, and his whole thing is that the drive down the bumpy road means that the wine always tastes better, and that's why you taste it at the cellar door, it tastes amazing. You get it home, and it's not quite as good. It's not as good. And you kind of, because you've taken the romance out of it. Tomatoes in Italy are always good, but put them by a kind of on a hillside with Italian women. Amazing.
Exactly. Let's just go back to the Good Food and Wine Show quickly. It's happening at the moment. It finishes on the 3rd of August. It's at the Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg. As Matt quite correctly says, there are tickets still available. You can get them at CompuTicket, or you can get them at the door, just so that you know how much they are. 125 Rand per adult. You'll pay 50 Rand per child under 12. And free for children under 3 years old. So there you go.
Brilliant.
There's some really, really cool people who are going to be joining you, Matt. And I have no doubt that your shows are going to be absolutely packed.
Well, I want to talk about cricket.
Yes.
Can we
let's
talk
do
about
that.
Kevin Peterson coming to Melbourne and what we're going to get? He's going to play in the Big Bash League for the Melbourne Stars, which is my team. Is this good news or bad news? What do you reckon?
Well, listen, I think it's good news because I have a feeling he's now going to become an Australian and then play for the Australian Test side. Yes, because they've allowed that.
And then the Australians can hate him, and the South Africans
hate him.
And the English can hate him. I love it.
We'll have to hate him again.
The trifecta, I love it. And okay, next big question: how come there's not a South African team in the Super 15 final? How come it's the Crusaders and the Springbok are a great team? Well, why doesn't it translate into your club sides?
You know what? Because we went there last week. We had to play against the Crusaders, and then we sat and went, do we really want to spend another week down here? And we decided no.
It's a bit cold and wet down there, isn't it?
So we just threw the game. No, the truth of the matter is we were just rubbish.
We
weren't good enough.
Yeah,
but we'll come back.
Hey, look, I'm involved with the Melbourne Rebels, so I understand rubbish.
Listen, they're starting.
Oh, yeah,
which is
and
okay.
there's some great young players. Jason Wood was a real star of the future.
No, they've got some terrific guys.
Matt, it's such a pleasure to have you in studio. You've got a very busy day. I know that. We've heard from everyone that you're running from interviews to interviews.
Yeah, but everything's been hootful other than this.
Oh, good.
That's been brilliant.
Fantastic.
Listen, thanks so much for coming into our studio, and we've had so much excitement. People are really, really excited that you're here with us, and I think the people who are going to come and see you and taste your cuisine over on Sunday
Cuisine.
at the food
Such
and
a
wine.
big word for such a
I know.
rubbish thing.
Yeah. I think they're going to just love you as they do on TV.
Oh, this has been an absolute pleasure coming here, guys.
Thank
You're
you,
legends
Matt.
of radio, and I
Thank
can
you.
see why
Cheers. Thank
No,
you.
thank you
That's
very
kind
much.
of you.
There we go.
And enjoy the South African hospitality. We're a friendly bunch.
now. You know, it's like being at home.
It's
I
just,
can tell you right
it's
now.
just, it's just when it comes to sport that things get a little bit tetchy. That's all.
No, but I like that because you're obsessed with sport as we are, and
There we go.
that's a great joiner.
We can all relate. There we go.
The 1FF1 show with Sasha, Ian, and Daisy. Weekdays 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. on balls.co.za.